Russian media just dropped a bombshell about possible peace talks, or de-escalation talks, we should say, between Russia and folks in the Pentagon. So are there smart people in the Pentagon who are trying to undermine the warmongers in the Biden administration? This is happening at the same time, of course, that the warmongers in Washington, D.C. and NATO are actively pushing us into World War III. But it appears, according to reports, that President Trump and Russian officials are separately and quite actively trying to prevent a nuclear war. Back-channel talks are happening as we speak. Amazingly good news. So that's positive. We are an anti-war show here. All of the legacy media desperately wants war because that's how they make a lot of money. That's how CNN makes money. That's how the Washington Post makes money. That's how all these big publications make money. They absolutely want that. We don't. Well, I plan to get to that part of the story in a second here, but first, the warmongers in the Biden administration want an escalated war with Russia. They've been pushing for it. They're demanding $24 billion more in order to funnel it into that country, a country that has been destroyed, of course, because of their proxy war. And Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the de facto United States president at this point, once again is asking Ukraine to lower its conscription age so that children can fight and die on the front lines, essentially. Now, I played you this soundbite yesterday. The State Department is doubling down on this push to get children, basically, well, I say children, but I look at an 18-year-old young boy. I think like my son is 14, 4 years away from that age, and Antony Blinken desperately wants these people to go fight and die.
Well, because originally the conscription age in Ukraine was upper 20s. They've since lowered it,
right.
But it still is not 18 or 21. And so he just does not care that young men go free. He really wants them to fight Russia.
So listen to him say this.
And finally, mobilization. This is critical because even with the money, even with the munitions, there have to be people on the front lines to deal with the Russian aggression. Ukraine has hard decisions to make about further mobilization, but these are necessary decisions. We have a commitment, though, for every person, every soldier that Ukraine mobilizes. We're committed to making sure that they have the training and the equipment they need to effectively defend the country. And again, that's what we focused on. Going forward, as I said, Ukraine is on an irreversible path to NATO membership, but we're focused on this in a practical way. We set up a dedicated NATO.
Yeah.
He's lying. And in fact, Ukrainian soldiers have said that their training manuals are in English, which they cannot read. Also, how would we feel if a foreign government came in and said, we think more of your children need to be conscripted to fight? We would kick that person right out and say, go mind your own business. But we get to say, because of all the money and weapons that we've sent.
If that happened in the United States, the parrot mockingbird media, like the New York Times, the Washington Post, would make a case for it.
Yeah.
They would publish pieces about how that's a great idea that we send younger children to die because they love war, because they're the worst. And Caitlin Johnstone, I think, wrote a great piece about this. She's vehemently anti-war. She's anti-hegemony. And she wrote this piece about this morning. Blinken is pushing for Ukrainian teens to die for U.S. hegemony. And she says, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken repeated the U.S. government's new position that Ukraine needs to start sending 18 to 25-year-olds to fight in its war with Russia, telling Reuters on Monday that getting younger people into the fight we think many of us think is necessary. This comes even as polls have begun showing that Ukrainians favor making a deal with Russia to end this war as quickly as possible. This is one of those things that looks more evil the longer you stare at it. She's right. I thought about more and more about this overnight, by the way. They're pushing for teenagers to be thrown into the fires of an unwinnable war. It's like nothing, like a corporation saying they need to hire more staff to accommodate their growing business. And why? She says, to tie up Russia so that Syria can be turned into a smoking crater and allow the U.S. war machine to focus its crosshairs on Iran and China, with the end goal of total planetary domination, all because some swamp monsters decided after the fall of the Soviet Union that the U.S. must maintain unipolar global hegemony no matter the cost. She goes on to say, I love Caitlin. She's amazing, isn't she?
Yes.
Just to take a moment here and take a breath, we need more people like her. She says, Ukraine barely even has anyone in the country from the ages of 18 to 25 for various reasons, many of which predate this war. But the managers of the U.S. centralized empire are pushing to scrape out the few they do have and toss them into the landmines and artillery fire just to keep this unwinnable war going for a few more months. Whether they succeed or not, the fact that they even tried is so profoundly psychopathic, it's actually hard to wrap your mind around. Hallelujah. She's amazing.
It's Hunger Games. I know I say this all the time, but this is the Hunger Games. I don't know how you're Anthony Blinken and you advocate for this and then you go home and sleep on your pillow. I do not know how you do that.
So good news, though, at least in all of this. So she's right about that. But go ahead, Philip.
It just like blows my mind that the U.S. is so, I don't even know what the word is, like horrible and arrogant. That why are we getting involved in their conscription? Yeah.
Because we run the country. We run their country, So if anyone's sitting back thinking like that they're a sovereign country and that we don't, you're lying to yourself. Philip just brought up the greatest point, which is the CIA is running Ukraine. We know this. Categorically, they're running that country. The U.S. State Department is running Ukraine. We told you about earlier this week how Zelensky, the dictator of that country who canceled elections and is now the dictator, has basically admitted they can't win and peace agreement should likely be on the table. What did we do? We said, sorry, we're going to send you more money. And NATO says, sorry, no peace talks. No peace talks. Those are off the table. Mm-hmm. So we are running the show. The U.S. State Department, the CIA, the deep state with the Mockingbird media in the United States is running Ukraine. Don't lie to yourself. If you think otherwise, you're an idiot. That's exactly what's happening. But there is some good news because Russia media are reporting that Russian Chief of General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, held a phone call with the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, Charles Q. Brown Jr., last week. The Biden administration has cut off all diplomatic ties with Russia. So this is a first sort of a lifeline, maybe, and a first in a long time. And it could be long overdue that they're actually talking and admitting this. Gerasimov said this about the phone call. Said the U.S. side was informed about the exercises in the eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea, which we showed you yesterday, launching hypersonic missiles and all of those tests. So they communicated about this. And he said this involved live fire drills, launches of high-precision missiles. And he said this was to prevent possible incidents in connection with the presence of U.S. and NATO ships in the area of this Russian exercise. So talking is good. What do we have against talking? At least we know they're having some kind of a conversation.
Kamala Harris had a lot against talking. She was like, no, I won't talk to Russia. No, not without Zelensky. Well, yeah, I mean,
you can't. What is Raytheon going to sell us if they're just talking? Like microphones? I don't think so. They're not going to get their profits.
Yeah. And to the credit of the legacy media, the New York Times did report this meeting and said that they were talking about de-escalation. Interesting that hasn't got a lot of coverage. It's not trending, right?
Buried.
But it's huge for us that have sort of been clenching our butt cheeks about whether or not our leaders are going to lead us into nuclear war. Can I say butt cheeks?
You can. So Speaker Mike Johnson, he's rejected the Biden administration's request now for $24 billion of new Ukraine aid, basically giving a huge middle finger to Zelensky. And he said that any further assistance to Ukraine would be decided by President Trump when he assumes office in January. So that bank account is closed through Christmas. You're done. And of course, Anthony Blinken and the Biden administration says whatever we have left, we're going to try to send it there and fast track it as soon as we can. But Speaker Johnson last night saying we're done.
Yeah,
we're done. We're closing off the teat.
Okay.
No more.
I'll believe that when I see it. But I like the sentiment, Clayton.
I do. Do you ever have the feeling that you're being surveilled and hesitate to share things or of interest via text messages or emails with your friends and loved ones? Well, recently, outspoken parents at a PTA meeting and Catholic Americans have been labeled as domestic terrorists by the FBI. These types of labels can be used to allow the U.S. government to surveil its citizens and others who live abroad without legal due process. Fortunately, the founders of Bunker have created an app to uphold people's rights. Bunker is not beholden to any third-party corporation, investor, or government. Bunker deeply believes that privacy is a human right and that everyone on Earth deserves bank-level security. Bunker provides you protection from state and corporate surveillance as well as cyber criminals. It includes a completely secure and private messenger, a robust password manager, secure cloud storage for your files and documents. Bunker is built to uphold the rights of people and protect them from cyber crimes. Download Bunker from the App Store or the Google Play Store today. Use the offer code REDACTED to receive your first year free.
Here's a sentiment I don't like. Politico reports that the Biden White House is considering preemptive pardons for people who may get, quote, caught up in Trump's crosshairs. Who would that be? Any guesses? Here's what Politico says, that it could be January 6th members of Congress like Adam Schiff from California, Liz Cheney, who is from Wyoming, as well as Anthony Fauci. We know who he is because of his COVID pandemic leadership. Okay, why would they need pardons? Because if they do become falsely accused by the Justice Department, shouldn't they have their day in court? Shouldn't they have to defend themselves like other citizens? Fauci, there's just some reasons why I'm not for this. Spitballing here. Fauci, manipulated research to throw off the American public off the scent of COVID as a lab leak. He did fund gain function research and lied to Congress about it. He put in place non-scientific measures like 6 feet distancing that he then said admitted just sort of came up out of nowhere. Okay. Are those things crimes? Again, that's for a court of law to decide. It's not for you and me, unless you are a court of law. But I don't want him to be preempted from ever answering for that. Adam Schiff, we saw in the Twitter files, punished Twitter for not validating that there was Russian disinformation on the platform when they said we can't find it. He also asked Twitter to ban investigative journalists. Liz Cheney selectively edited an Oscar-worthy movie about January 6th, but excluded exculpatory evidence in her investigative committees. All these people, sure, are heinous. Are they criminals? I don't know, but I don't want them to not have to answer for this. If there is some part of the law that can prosecute them, they should have their day in court. They should have to fight it like everybody else. I think this could totally implode our court system. Why would some people have to answer for their actions and others not? It's a total perversion on a partisan nature of our entire system.
Well, Scott Rose in our chat here on YouTube says, what the F is a preemptive pardon in the first place?
Right. So it's interesting because most pardons are for people who have already served their time and you're just wiping it off their record. So now we have this whole idea of preemptive pardons. It's perplexing.
Like pre-crime, like Minority Report.
Yeah.
You might do this.
You're admitting that they're guilty. Like they're guilty,
Yes.
so let's pardon them now.
Well, that's the thing. Like the presidential pardon power is like, they can like basically say, okay, you're no longer guilty of these crimes, but there has to be a crime. Like, what the hell are you pardoning? Is it just like carte blanche? Like you can just go like, can the president just give somebody like immunity? Like they can just go commit whatever crime they want and nobody can do anything about it. Like, do they have that
like
power?
a Monopoly board, get out of jail free card. You just keep it the whole time you're playing.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Of course, this applies to federal crimes, right? Not state crimes, which is where sort of, rape and all this other stuff that's out there for like Hunter Biden, right? Still would apply at a state level. Like it wouldn't matter at a federal level.
Right. Yeah. And so, this would be a severe test of our justice system and our Constitution. I think most people are not for it, except sort of blindly accepting liberals who love COVID and love the pandemic and love the vaccine and love January 6th as a tool, as a talking point. But for the most part, I think we all agree that if they are accused, they should defend themselves. And that's how it should work.
Yes.
So do you think Biden would actually do this? He has so little to lose, but do you think he actually has love lost for Liz Cheney or Adam Schiff that he would do them these solids? Or is there someone inside the deep state that would the way they sort of forged his resignation letter do this? I don't know. Let me know what you think.
Well, clearly he is not president of the United States. So we can stop talking about President Biden making these decisions. He's not. He's absolutely out to lunch. He's not making these decisions. Somebody else is making these decisions for him. As we've talked about on the show, we've had a number of guests who said that Obama pulling the strings behind, Antony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, these people in the White House. So he's not pulling the strings here. Someone else is writing up these documents, and it's like one of those pens. They're like just putting his hand on it, and he's like having to scroll it with a signature, an auto pen.
Right. So what it begs the question is, not just Anthony Fauci himself. Anthony Fauci can't give himself a pardon. He may not be able to lobby Biden himself for a pardon, but who's behind him that was making him, who stands to fall with him that might make Joe Biden do this? That's the more interesting question. That's the base layer that we want to get to.
Well, speaking of craziness, fireworks on Capitol Hill this morning. Congress grilling the Secret Service over the assassination attempts on President Trump's life. How did multiple assassination attempts take place to try and bring down President Trump? And how did the Secret Service fail so miserably at its job? There's still at least that I can count about 5 to maybe 7, maybe even 8 huge questions about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, when President Trump was nearly killed and shot in the ear just by turning his head. Let's just talk about him right here. The motive for the assailant. Authorities have still not determined why this 20-year-old Matthew Crooks, if that is the actual killer, in fact, or the attempted assassin, actually targeted Trump in the first place. We still don't know that, and the Secret Service can't tell us. Security lapses, how Crooks even managed to access the rooftop here near the rally without any sort of detection. We know that SWAT snipers observed Crooks nearly 2 hours before the shooting, failed to do anything about it. The Secret Service then faced criticism for not, securing the area adequately, leading to the resignation of Director Kimberly Cheadle. Then what about the accomplices? Because as Representative Mike Wallace has pointed out, there's no way this guy carried this out on his own. Clearly, they had help. However, this was pulled off. There was some sort of help. And he talked about the sophistication of the attack, the assailant's use of encrypted communications. 20-year-old, and he's pulling this off? Really? So who was he working with? The preparations for all of this, the details about how Crooks transported his rifle to the rally site, accessed the rooftop, all of that remains unclear. We still don't have answers for it. What about the fact that the FBI then swooped in and had his body cremated? Or his body was cremated very, very quickly. And his entire apartment was swept clean. Even silverware removed from the house. So what the hell's going on here? Also, communications failures. There were multiple breakdowns in communications with the Secret Service, law enforcement agencies. Local police reported that Secret Service did not accept offers to use drones for surveillance at the rally site. They turned those down, which could have provided, of course, critical intelligence. We could have actually seen that footage and seen what happened, but they turned it down. You don't need extra cameras, right? We don't need extra cameras over which to scrutinize them. Why was that turned down? So those are like 8, 9 questions. Do you guys have more? Drop them in the chat here. But this was brought up today on Capitol Hill, members of Congress grilling the current Secret Service Director, Ronald Rao. And it started off with this. Representative Mark Green basically says, you guys were so apathetic at your job that this is why you failed. Watch.
It seems almost to me like it was lackadaisical. I mean, it's hard to fathom that someone would say, we don't need to cover this. And the communications issues with the local law enforcement, I asked the question when they came before the committee recently, when everybody showed up on the day, was there a check-in? And there were law enforcement agencies that had never even talked to Secret Service that day. I mean, these are really basic things. And you would think they would know to do those kinds of things. So it speaks of apathy or complacency that is really unacceptable in an organization like the Secret Service. One of my questions to you is,
then he, then fireworks got even bigger than that. Once he sort of calling out the lies about the Secret Service here and their apathy, Secret Service Director Ronald Rao and Representative Pat Fallon got into a huge fight when Fallon asked him about showing up at a 9/11 memorial as a dignitary rather than a Secret Service agent at the time. They had a huge back and forth. This was an unbelievable moment. Watch.
Congressman, what you're not seeing is the sack of the detail out of the picture's view. And that is the day where we remember the more than 3,000 people that have died on 9/11. I actually responded to Ground Zero. I was there going through the ashes of the World Trade Center. I was there at Fresh Kills.
I'm not asking you that.
I was
I'm asking
there,
you
Congressman.
were you the special agent in charge?
To show respect
You were not.
for a Secret
that's
Service
a bunch of
member
horse hockey.
that died on 9/11.
Oh, that you're trying to be.
Do not invoke 9/11 for political purposes.
Oh, I'm not. I'm invoking this.
You are, sir.
Gentlemen,
And you are out of line.
I would like to ask him a question.
Please.
You are out of
Don't try
line,
to bully
Congressman.
me. Don't
Way
try
out
to
of
bully
line.
me. I am an elected member of Congress, and I'm asking you a serious question, and you are
I
playing
am a
politics.
public servant who has served this nation, and
You
spent
won't answer the
time
question.
on our day, on our country's darkest
Mr.
day.
Chairman, Committee will come
Do not
to order.
politicize it.
Committee will come to order.
I'm asking you serious questions for the American people, and they're very simple. They're not trick questions. Were you the special agent in charge that
No,
day?
I wasn't. I was there
Oh, no,
representing
Mr.
the
Chairman,
United
I'm
States
just asking
Secret
you yes or
Service,
no.
sir.
Mr. Fallon, your
and
time's
did not
expired.
affect protective
Fallon,
You know
operations.
why you were
time's
there?
expired.
Because you wanted to be visible, because you were auditioning for this
I was
job.
there to
that
pay
you're not gonna
respect for a
get
fallen
till
member of
January
this
20th.
agency.
You endangered
You are
President
out of
Biden's
line,
life,
Congressman.
Vice President
You are out of
Harris's
line.
life, because you put those agents out of position.
Mr.
Did you have a
Chairman.
radio with
Mr.
you?
Fallon,
Did
your
you wear a
time
vest?
has
Did you have a
expired.
weapon?
Mr.
No.
I did, sir, and you are out of line.
Mr. Chairman.
I loved that.
Wow.
I enjoyed it.
I did too. So all these questions we still don't have answers to, and again, right now President Trump has had to take security matters into his own hand. President-elect Trump at Mar-a-Lago with these like robot-controlled dogs that are like
Can you blame him?
patrolling. No, I mean you can't. This is the kind of incompetence that you have at the Secret Service level right now, and we know a lot of those people were even contracted. They weren't even actually Secret Service there that day. So, yeah, a lot of questions we still don't have.
Here's a question I have. Does the president appoint the head of the Secret Service? Is that an appointed position, cabinet position?
I believe
because
so.
if it is,
Actually,
we have not seen it yet.
I don't know. I'll have to check that.
In which case, he might want to choose pretty carefully. See where I'm going with that.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
certainly you want to surround yourself with the prop. That's what, Roger Stone, a friend of the show, and he's been on multiple times saying that President Trump needs to make sure that those people he has around him are hand selected,
Right.
that you trust those people with the utmost authority.
Yeah.
So I'll get an answer to that in a second. I don't know if he's appointed. I know he has to be approved by Congress, but I don't know if he's appointed by the president.
Or she. We've had
Yeah.
a female in there for a while.
Did you guys hear about this? Ashish Kumar Jha, former Biden administration COVID-19 response coordinator, he just gave a speech at the University of Michigan School of Public Health, and he warned of a new age of pandemics fueled by bioweapons development and natural threats. He called for a massive investment in new vaccines against pathogens that don't even exist yet. And he urged a war against so-called misinformation. But the question we need to ask is, who's working on bioweapons right now, and how many labs are there globally? Yes, Trump got the win, but evil is still lurking out there in the background. Being prepared is the best defense from these globalists. The wellness company's Contagion Emergency Kit, engineered by Dr. Peter McCullough, friend of the show, and his medical board, includes 5 critical life-saving medications like ivermectin, Tamiflu, a nebulizer, hydroxychloroquine. Every household can now have access to these hard-to-get medications that you can keep right in your medicine cabinet, minus all of the red tape. It's simple. Fill out a digital intake form and your kit arrives in 1 to 2 weeks. That's it. Don't wait until the deep state puts their plans into action. Stay ready for the unexpected. Head over to twc.health/redacted and use the code redacted to save $32 off plus free shipping. Again, head over to twc.health/redacted and use that code redacted to save a boatload of money and get free shipping. Kits are only available to United States residents.
Well, the shell casing from the fatal shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson reportedly had these words inscribed on them: deny, defend, depose. Well, that is not just the insurance industry's MO, but also the title of this 2010 book about the insurance industry's failure to pay claims. If you're an American or have any kind of insurance, you know that this is how medical insurance works. They are there to make you crazy. I mean, raise your hand if you've cried trying to get a claim paid before. Anybody? Yeah. I cry all the time, like dealing with insurers all the time. That's just how it works, right? But is that a clue to the motive of this person's murder? Well, the NYPD has released these images of the alleged shooter. The shooter has not been found yet, but online sleuths tracked a city bike that left the scene of the crime. We told you about that yesterday. Now, online, this has turned into sort of a John Wick meets Aaron Brockovich type theory. Some have been celebrating the downfall of a powerful executive for the failure of his industry. That's very Bolshevik. It's a very eat the rich mentality. Former Washington Post journalist Taylor Lorenz, she posted the name of Thompson's successor. People felt like this was putting a mark on her almost, along with some fodder for why the company should be hated for their refusal to cover anesthesia in some surgeries. She has since deleted this. And in a follow-up, she said, well, I didn't really mean for anyone to hurt her. I just wanted people to start a letter writing campaign to the head of these insurers. So that's so novel, right? Or letter writing. She's like, I just wanted peaceful letter writing. Okay, but then she also said this, and this one is still up on Blue Sky with more information about this anesthesia claim denial. She said, people wonder why we want these executives dead. I mean, I don't think wanting them dead fixes the problem at all. Here's another Blue Sky user saying that we should remember Brian Thompson only by his company's claim denials, because United Health seems to be one of the worst. Here's another person saying he has no tears at all for Brian Thompson. He says, no, we should be mourning the deaths of 68,000 Americans who needlessly die each year so that insurance companies like Brian Thompson can become multimillionaires. Here's someone online telling us at Redacted that we're cockroaches for not reporting the company's performance along with this death. I mean, what do? We don't promote health insurance companies on this show. You guys we're sponsored by Crowd Health, which is a health insurance company disruptor. So I don't think that, we're by no means excusing the insurance industry of their demonic business practices. We are saying it's sad when somebody's dad and husband dies. This is a tragic, what looked like a purposeful hit. And even if he was an evil person, I don't think any of us want to live in a lawless society where people take justice into their own hands. This, according to the Daily Mail, is his family. These two boys now lost their father and this woman. So I don't think that celebrating his death, it will change these kids' lives. It will not change the insurance industry at all. This is nobody's victory. If we want to disrupt the insurance industry, there are ways to do this. We've told you about that. But killing people, probably not going to get you what you want, and it's evil. So let us know what you think of this.
Just a real-time follow-up here. Yes, I just wanted to confirm. So the Secret Service appointee by the president picks them. But I was wondering if they had to get cabinet or Senate approval. They don't. So it's just, they don't have to go through like cabinet approval with the U.S. Senate. Yeah. They just, so the president can pick like, Dan Bongino as your Secret Service head, but you don't have to get then approval by Congress in that regard. So anyway, good news there. They have to go through the whole cabinet process.
Right. So he can choose wisely, because I can only imagine that Democrats would want him to be, guarded by Ace Ventura.
Hey, Ace Ventura found Snowflake. So, well, the New York Times is under fire from Elon Musk for pushing war and deep state propaganda. The New York Times would love, of course, nothing more than for us to go into a full-on war with Russia or Iran, or they loved going to war with Iraq. Of course, push the fake. I think New York Times is largely responsible for the war in Iraq and the propaganda surrounding that war and drumming up support for that war. Full stop. I think you know that.
They had exculpatory evidence that Saddam was not lining up around Kuwait. They knew that.
So the New York Times loves war. And the FBI, a former FBI agent told me that the New York Times is their favorite place to leak fake stories. Just look at the Russian collusion story. The New York Times worked hand in glove, of course, with the intelligence network to publish fake stories to undermine President Trump. Lee Smith, of course, outlines all of this in his great book, The Plot Against the President, which Natalie and I are both reading right now, actually. It's excellent. And so, yes, they have a long history of doing all of this. Elon Musk, though, tweeted today about this war propaganda and said this: the New York Times is woke warmonger propaganda. which then was shared over 4 million times. Posting, of course, what Wall Street Mav posted, which says this: is the New York Times the most dangerous news organization in America? It seems like it's captured by the military-industrial complex. And look at all these headlines. How to choke Iraq. Bombing Iraq isn't enough. American bombs make Iraq stronger. To stop Iran's bomb Iran. Bomb Syria, even if it's illegal. That's my favorite New York Times headline. Bomb Syria, even if it's illegal. Bomb North Korea. Oh, what was the other one? Bomb North Korea before it's too late. Yeah, you don't want to wait till too long to bomb North Korea. Just unbelievable how long they've been pushing for
too late.
Too late.
Like,
too late.
What clock are we racing?
We should have already done it.
Or before they blow themselves up, or like, what's the clock?
I don't know. But not only, there's such warmongers, and Elon Musk is correct about that. They really hate the United States, and they hate the United States Constitution. You can see how many headlines they've written. The Constitution is sacred. Is it also dangerous? One of the biggest threats to America's politics might be the country's founding document. That's right. Here's a whole roundup. Elections are bad for democracy, the New York Times writes. The First Amendment is out of control, they wrote this summer. This summer, it's out of control? How is it out of control? The Constitution is sacred. Is it also dangerous? So in the wake of, the Hunter Biden scandal, of course, they were pushing that story hard as well, and the fake Russian collusion hoax, of course. And then when, of course, that was all exposed, how long did it take the New York Times to actually publish the fact that the Hunter Biden laptop was real?
Oh, they were along with CBS. It was like a full year.
Yeah.
It was, I believe. I'd have to
I think it may have even been longer than that, actually, until, because the New York Post was out in front on the story, Miranda Devine and everything else. But Alina Habba, who is the Trump's lawyer, was at the airport after the Hunter Biden story broke this week, the pardon story. And notice, and she pointed this out, notice what's missing here from the headlines on the New York Times. Watch.
I'm in the airport and I'm looking at newspapers. And I just want you to take a look at this. New York Post, Hunter gets away with it. Wall Street Journal, Biden pardons son. New York Times, zero. Zero from the New York Times on Hunter Biden. Fake news.
Zero. Maybe it's because they were so invested in the story, they can't then just capitulate and admit defeat on this. So you recall this was amazing when Hunter Biden came out and emphatically said that his father wasn't involved in his financial dealings with his business. Well, here was the soundbite. This was the actual soundbite. Notice if.
Let me state as clearly as I can. My father was not financially involved in my business.
Okay. Did you notice? My father was not financially involved in my business. Well, then the New York Times published their quote about that press conference. I'm here, Mr. Biden said. Let me state clearly as I can. My father was not involved in my business. Oh, you just conveniently left out the most important word. Mm-hmm. Financially. Go ahead and play the soundbite again. Can we, Philip?
I am here. Let me state as clearly as I can. My father was not financially involved in my business.
Yeah. So the warmongers.
There's a great book that I read over the summer called Bad News, How Woke Media is Undermining Democracy. And she tells the history of American media and how Joseph Pulitzer was making so much money because he was selling penny papers to poor people, so he had massive circulation. The New York Times purposely rejected that model. Even when they had the opportunity to buy his papers, they rejected it because they had to sell to advertisers that they were excluding the working class. So they would refuse circulation in certain working class neighborhoods. They purposely don't want working class people. They are selling the elites their own superiority. That is their business model. They could not sell to Rolex if Rolex thought that people who were, I guess, coal miners were reading the New York Times. This is how they survive. This is how they make their money, is this elitism. So, okay, believe them if you want to, but it's clear that they need to be supported by the deep state. And who are they advertising to? I guess anyone who's watching the show doesn't believe them anyway. So good on us.
Yeah. How many people actually have a New York Times subscription? I'd like to. We have let's see, 40 or 50,000 of you watching right now across all our platforms. How many of you actually would ever pay to have a New York Times subscription? Just curious.
I actually do. I do specifically for the reason of because sometimes I have to pull articles for edits and get.
I use Archive for that.
I never read it.
Oh, you should cancel your subscription.
Don't say that because that's stored. We're not telling you to cancel, but I use Archive for that.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, we can't tell you what to pay for and what not to.
I can't seem to unsubscribe. I can't seem to unsubscribe from their email list because I keep trying, and then they put me on like 45,000 New York Times email lists. So they're like, well, this is the Christmas list. You need to unsubscribe from that. You need to. So yeah, but
the cooking list, the Christmas list.
Right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, our chat overwhelmingly says, no way.
It's like a gym membership. You can't get out.
Divorce. Just T says, all right, Philip, you got to get a divorce from you've got to do it. Most of their subscribers are government offices.
Never read it.
Yeah.
It's not like I ever open it and read it. I just have to grab headlines on occasion.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, did you know that AI has hallucinations, like kind of drug trips? That's what they call it when AI tells you something that's totally nonsense. According to Google's AI model, this is based on incorrect assumptions made by the model. But how does that happen? I'm going to show you this hilarious example of it, and then we're going to try and collectively figure out how did the computer come up with this? Well, this made my week. It made me laugh so hard for about the last 24 hours, and now I can never get over it, and I'm calling my children Hunter to Butts. I want to get a dog named Hunter to Butts. So the View host, Anna Navarro, said that she used AI to look up past U.S. presidents that have pardoned their family members or in-laws, and it came up with this post, which she then felt comfortable to put on her X account, saying Woodrow Wilson pardoned his brother-in-law, Hunter to Butts, and then she goes on to talk about Bill Clinton and Donald Trump pardoning. Only the thing is, you see that community note there is that there's no Hunter to Butts. We have no record that Woodrow Wilson ever knew somebody named Hunter to Butts or was related to. It's so funny too that she's like, tell me again how Joe Biden is setting precedent with her laughing emojis, and then the community notes just handles her. Hunter to Butts was never pardoned. He's innocent, whoever he is. So later she explained that she got this from ChatGPT, as if that's better. Here's her post about it where she just looks it up. So it's not like I'm someone with gravitas, I know history. No, she looked it up on her phone and then put it on. So now we know how ABC News is getting their research. Believe them at your own peril. But how does this happen? What I'm showing you there is an AI hallucination. They made up Hunter to Butts. The comments on this post, you guys, are gold. It's like people saying, what about Hugh Jass?
Right.
What about D's nuts?
D's nuts. Have you ever pardoned D's nuts?
What about Amanda Hug and kiss? So, how does AI hallucinate like that? How does that happen? It says it's taking inputs and then making assumptions, but who put that in, and why Woodrow Wilson? And why and how? It's too good. It's too good.
I think the confusion was because didn't you see the PBS documentary on Hunter to Butts where he was actually just a friend of Woodrow Wilson's brother-in-law? So I don't know that he got pardoned. Yeah,
he's innocent.
Check it out.
Okay,
it's a great documentary.
Right.
Documentary on Hunter to Butts.
Okay. Are you serious? Is there a real PBS special about that?
No, I'm not serious.
No, there's
okay.
No.
So yeah, how does this hallucination happen? It should teach us all, we should do our own homework. We should not rely on this. Maybe AI gets me started, but I need to do a little of my own research. How about this week from Esquire? Esquire magazine published this story about how George Bush pardoned his son Neil, when also that's not a thing that ever happened. Neil Bush was never indicted for any crimes. He did settle a case with the FDC over a bank that he worked at, but there was no pardon, no discussion of a pardon, no crime to pardon from. So how does Esquire just make this up when they were called out on it? They published this. This story has been updated. An earlier version stated incorrectly that George Bush gave a pardon to his son. Esquire regrets that error. I mean, it's not like a little error. It was the headline. Now, if you...
Editor's note.
Right. Editor's note. Whole story is crap.
The whole story is garbage.
But it's there. Now, later they took down the entire story. This is what you would get if you looked it up. Now, see the author there? His name is Charles P. Pierce. In a turn of extreme irony, that person also wrote this book called Idiot America. According to the summaries, I have not read the book, it is about how Americans will just believe anything. So is he just testing us, or did he also use AI, or is he proof positive of an American idiot? There's no explanation. And as a journalist, sure, Clayton and I have made mistakes before, sure. But you have to explain yourself or else people won't trust you.
Is he going to pull the whole? No, it was just a social experiment thing that people do when they get caught doing something stupid. No, it was just a social experiment. I was just kidding.
Yeah, I read a whole book as an experiment, as a test to see if you caught on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was wondering. So he has not explained himself, so we don't know why he would do something quite so stupid. So is AI just unreliable, or we idiots, or both? I think probably both things are true. Just this week, a Stanford misinformation expert admitted that he used AI to draft a court document that contained multiple fake citations for AI in a case about AI. Get this, and how meta. He wrote this expert testimony. He charged the state of Minnesota $600 per hour to be their expert witness. But then it turns out that AI put 2 fake articles in the citations of his work, and the opposing counsel found it. And he was called out for it. He said, "Oh, sorry, I just didn't notice that AI had generated 2 hallucinated citations." But like, you don't check your own work? What if he's a professor of communications at Stanford? What if his students did this? You would hope that he would fail them. And so should he get away with something? So again, using AI, maybe you can use it to give you some clues. But you would think, like, even the Hunter DeBunce thing, this is the thing. You're putting something on Twitter and you're like, oh, I see that on Google, or I see it on AI. You know, I don't recall this Hunter DeBunce story. Maybe I should figure out, why was he pardoned? What's the story there? Maybe I should do a little more research. No, she just went with it full, like a bull in a china shop.
And then
I'm saying this as a mic drop.
And then she blames ChatGPT and Twitter sleuths for calling her out. She's like, hey, Twitter sleuths, you might want to blame ChatGPT.
Right.
No, we're blaming you as an ABC News anchor or an ABC News face, of information.
Right. That this didn't pass your own smell test, so what are we to think of your judgment now?
The whole DeButts thing smells.
It smells, yeah.
Smells.